Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Slow Ready Podcast, a casual drive into the music and culture of Goose. I'm Alex,
And I'm Mike.
and on today's episode, we're going to kick things off recapping the first show of 2026 at Jam in the Streets, which Mike was lucky enough to attend in Athens, Georgia, before getting into our main topic and deep diving into one of the quintessential Goose songs, Madhuvan. But before all that, let's do the little bit of housekeeping we always get to. Got to plug the socials at Slow Ready Pod, or everywhere you are. And just want to shout out our YouTube channel where we started posting videos lately, and you can see our faces. You know, if you don't like my takes, you can see like where my dog scratched the shit out of my face this morning and laugh at me. So go subscribe to our YouTube, but also follow us on the socials where we post updates about all the Goose news that you want and need, and post set lists and things like that. It's a good time over there. Before we jump into the main topic, though, we always got to get through the news and notes as well. In our first segment, we call Hot Tea. Hey, everybody. Future Alex here, butting into your episode. In true Slow Ready podcast tradition, we recorded this episode yesterday, and the big news about Big Modern broke today as I'm recording this update for you. Album's coming June 12th, Goose's sixth studio album, and their third one in 14 months here to be released. That's pretty wild if you ask me. We're really excited to break down the track list that leaked. Good to Be, the singles out everywhere. We kind of talked about how it was out for a few hours and then was taken down real quick in this hot tea. So that's why everything we're talking about is a little bit out of date. We didn't have the news just yet, but now it's all out there in the open. So you can thank the Slow Ready podcast for getting things moving, because every time we record, we're out of date and something big happens. But anyway, hope you enjoy this episode. Hope you enjoy the speculation on this hot tea, and back to your regularly scheduled programming. So the big topic, the topic on everyone's mind is this whole Big Modern debacle going on. I guess I'll try to run us through the saga here as best I can. There's a lot that's happened since our last episode. But essentially, a website popped up, bigmodern.com, and people took notice. It was a flashing exclamation point in pink on a yellow background. And then people started noticing signs and spray paint on the streets of cities like New York and Philly and Denver that matched the same color scheme and said Big Modern with the exclamation point, just like the song. Interestingly enough, on the website, if you went to the source code, there was all kinds of hidden messages in the source code that looked maybe like lyrics, but was hinting at how the site needs more eyes and about reveals being hidden from the people searching through the source code. Eventually, on Friday, April 3rd, a little face button appeared on the website, which led to a YouTube video that premiered at 12:11 p.m. Eastern that day, featuring Jake Lacey, aka Plop from The Office, as a record company exec type, telling the band they needed to be more marketable and kind of the most hilarious, yet relatably saying nothing in corporate kind of speak. Just a lot of hilarity to it. Saying things like they need to have face on their face, and they're going to make 69 minutes of face and make the album big and modern. Just hilarious and kind of iconic at the end too, is the band sitting kind of lounging back in these neon yellow jumpsuits. I'll call them, I guess they're sweatpants and sweatshirts with the letters FACE to spell face on each one of them. I thought that was it for the day. But later on, Goose posted on their story they were in the streets of New York. They wound up going to the Knicks and Bulls game that night, wearing the outfits with Jake Lacey sitting between them in the same outfit he wore in that video. And, you know, it was fun to see people speculating about what the hell is going on, getting a shout from the announcers for their crazy outfits and things like that. And then I thought it was the end of that. But then about, I don't know, maybe like 1:30 in the morning on Saturday, the next day, a track called Good to Be leaked for a few hours on Meta platforms where people quickly grab the audio. It was the situation where you can kind of post it to your post, or post a song to your post, or attach it to your story. And people were taking like the minute and a half clip they could and parsing it all together and listening to the full song. And that was up for a few hours before it was quickly taken down. And I'm unclear if that was like a mistake or what. We don't know anything more than you guys. Just want to shout that out. But let's pause here real quick, Mike. I want to know what you thought about Good to Be before I keep getting into it.
Yeah, so the song itself I thought was fine. It was a little bit more 80s, I guess, than I was anticipating. It sounded a little bit like a cross between like vintage Gloria Estefan and Michael Jackson when he was in his prime. It was giving echoes of like conga lines and stuff like that. But I think it's got a lot of potential in a live setting. I think that we overuse this term a lot, but I think it could actually be a really good jam vehicle. It seems like the end of that could just be extra chaotic with Cotter in a live setting. So I'm kind of excited to see as spring tour is ramping up here shortly, just a couple days after we drop this episode, I'm sure. So interested to see where it's going to go. And it's completely different than Big Modern. So if you're planning on or of the thought, I guess, that this album is going to include Big Modern, this song was completely different than that. So I don't necessarily feel like I have a great sense of what the overall feel of the album is going to be. But I will say that it does sound like we're venturing a little bit more into the territory of EMG, where everything's a little bit higher production values and not as stripped down as Chain Your Dragon was. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only sample points we have are that quick leak of "Good to Be," and then like the 4 seconds of the end or the end of Big Modern, the metal part that they did at the end of the video
Yeah.
with Jake Lacey. So it's hard to tell for now, but I did like "Good to Be." I thought it was really catchy, super 80s sounding, a really nice hook to it. I do think it's going to be much more fun live, and my wife Sarah and I were dancing around to the song on Saturday for a good amount of the morning, and um, like you said, I think a lot of potential for jams on this one based off the end of the song. There's a cool outro to it, so I really hope it's released in full late or full soon by the time you listen to this, and that everyone who missed out on it can listen because it got taken down everywhere quick.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say that while I maybe won't be necessarily the target market if they are going with that kind of EMG sound again, all of those songs still translated excellently in the live setting. So I have no doubts that whatever new music we get is going to work in the live setting. That much I'm certain of.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's just the way it goes, man. Anyway, getting back into it. The only other thing that happened is then on Easter Sunday, the website continued to make changes, adding a little prompt in a box that would send the band signal was what it was referred to, but you could type anything in there. You'd get a point for whatever you typed or clicked on the page. And if you typed in face, the page would flash in hot pink face back at you with an escalating counter that would add signal points on the bottom left of the screen. If you looked in the source code, it was leading up to a counter that eventually, once it got to enough signal points, we got the most bizarre image of Cotter covered in Lord knows what substance. I don't want to get into it too much because it can be overly sexualized. Um, but it was just the weirdest JPEG file, and somehow, some way, someone decided to convert that JPEG into an MP3 file, which led to a 27-minute long TED tape style jam that sounded a lot like the jams that we would hear on Nugs, like on Set Break or before the show. It sounded a lot like that song that we got for a snippet of last year. I'm curious if it's the same one or not, but it was a good listen. I listened to it today as we're recording, and really fun listen nonetheless, and gives me optimism about future TED tapes.
Yeah, I'm glad you called that out because it does sound very similar to that, specifically the funky one on the set break at Nugs with all the boings and everything in the
Yes.
background. Very much in that vibe. Um, I will sidebar here just really quickly and say that this whole mystery that they're building, to quote Letterkenny, that it's not necessarily for me. I'm not necessarily getting caught up in all this, and I feel like there's kind of two camps of Goose fans. There are people that are hanging on to every kernel for dear life, and having a lot of fun sorting it out. It kind of also reminds me of, if you're familiar, but when Donnie Darko came out when I was in high school, that had a website that would kind of unlock things similar to this Big Modern website, and it was kind of fun to play along. So it's kind of like throwback to old internet to me as well. But maybe I'm just turning into an old grumpy man, but I'm just kind of like waiting on them to be like, tell me there's an album. Like, tell me there's an album and tell me when. Because it's just with busy life and everything, I just have not been able to follow along as closely as some others have. But also props to the community for unlocking some of these mysteries for some of us that maybe just don't have enough time to keep up with every little detail.
I certainly don't have enough time to keep up with every inch this thing moves along. I mean, I feel like I just ranted for 10 minutes talking about what's happened so far from my understanding of it, and I'm sure I missed some parts. But it is fun for me to follow along. Like I can appreciate the creativity behind all of this, and I think so much work went into this hype vehicle, for lack of a better term, to get promotion for this. What we think is a new album. We'll see what it is. I mean, Good to Be tells me there's new music coming, so I'm hoping it's a new album. Maybe it's another Shenanigans movie or something. Who knows? But I think it's an album, and it's fun to follow the saga. But I'm definitely not the guy who's trying to crack the code. We're just here to report what we hear about it after the fact. But we're regular fans like you, so we don't know anything more than anybody else. And
I will
we'll
say
find out
it's
the
at least
answer when
going
we
to be
get
an
it.
for sure. And I will say I think it's going to at least be an EP. You know, they've done several EPs throughout their career. I think this, if this is an EP, it'd be like their fifth. So it wouldn't shock me at all if it's not a full album and we get like 4 new songs or something like that. But I definitely think, to your point, new music is on the way. And I'll also agree with you. Like, they always get an A+ for creativity, and the video itself made me laugh out loud like a minimum of 10 times. So they're always hilarious, and I love their movies. That's not a shocker.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, people are losing their mind on the internet. Shocker, news of the day. That's never happened before. But
Sure.
this is all this stuff is not delaying when the music was going to come out. In my opinion,
Yep.
like I don't know that for sure. I guess, but there's no way that they were just like they're delaying the music for this. This is just their creative bone kind of coming out, and I do think that fulfills the guys in Goose and their their team in a lot of ways, and it's important for them to explore these creative avenues for them. So we'll get the music when we get it, and um, it, it's exciting. It's exciting. It's something to talk about. It's either get this or have a day where nothing happened in Goose Land. So it's fun to see the
For sure.
discussions going off.
Yeah, absolutely. The community is ablaze, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah. So that's really the big news. It's all been about bigmodern.com and Big Modern and Jake Lacey, but the other big news that happened was Jam in the Streets, dude, and you were there. I got our first show of 2026. So let's get into this set list. How about you read it off since I've been yapping for 20 minutes about Big Modern?
Yeah, my pleasure, buddy. So we got a hot tea opener. Really cool that happened. You just talked about that in our last episode too. That this year was, you were hoping to see hot tea get some love. So really cool to see that. And then we went into Flow Down, Arcadia, Hot Love and the Lazy Poet, Madalena in a brand new arrangement, Echo of a Rose, Your Direction, also with a brand new arrangement. They've been busy in their off time. Thatch, Hunger Sight, Don't Leave Me This Way, Give It Time, and then truly one of the GOAT encores, One More Saturday Night, Empress, into Shama, back into Empress. Where do you want to start, man?
This is a festival set list and a really well crafted one, in my opinion. Really fun to get back into the swing of things with Goose. But you were there, so I want to hear what your thoughts were. But obviously, we got to talk about the new arrangements of Madalena and the new arrangement for Your Direction. So let's start with Madalena. What'd you think about that one, man?
Yeah, this was kind of surprising to me. I didn't necessarily think that this song needed a rework, but man, does it work really well. They kind of fooled me. I said Madalena after hearing the first note, and then the intro continued for much longer, and I started to doubt myself. Maybe it's not Madalena, but sure enough, it was. Kind of a slower, not as piano focused intro, but I thought it really worked really well and kind of, I don't know if somber is the right word, but gave it a more meditative state, which I think, given the lyrics of the song and the emotions of the song, I think that really works. And I think the other big bonus is that they actually jammed it out a little bit. I mean, it's nothing crazy or anything, but um, Rick and Cotter particularly were getting into it at the end.
Yeah, yeah, that's well said. The jam is really was came out of left field after the already out of left field new arrangement, and it was terrific. And they really have been leaning into the '80s vibes a lot lately because this was very '80s ballady to me too. And then we got Good to Be shortly after. So interesting to see the new arrangement to feel like an '80s song, and that was my first notes on it. But I really enjoyed it. I'm very attached to the original arrangement. I hope it's a thing where they go back and forth, kind of like they did with Indian River for a while. And I hope that the OG version of Madalena is not gone because I do love that, but I also really love this.
Yeah, that's a good point. Atlas Dogs is another one that's got two different versions to it, and I think that texturally at its core, this song is a piano based song, which is not always the norm for Goose, but I do think that having that standard piano driven lead to open it up should still be in the mix no matter what happens.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the piano is really what drives it in the main version. It still was a driving factor on this version too. It just wasn't as up front and center.
100% agree on that. Yeah.
And then we got Your Direction, another new arrangement, another great time. It started off in a different point in the song than we expected for Your Direction starting off. But what'd you think about this? I think this was more your speed, if I'm guessing right.
Yeah, this kind of reversed my entire opinion about this song. And, that's got to be a pretty radical change for that to happen because this was one of my lowest ranked songs when we reviewed the album. And ironically, you were talking about Madalena being a little bit more 80s, and I agree. I think this one was a little bit less 80s. This was sounded more like Goose to me. You had Rick doing kind of the white boy reggae strokes on the guitar, and the rhythm was a little bit closer to syncopated. It had more of like a funky feel to it, and it was less yacht rocky. So for me, we're getting back more to the Goose sound with this song, and if we're going to do that, then I can see myself really getting behind Your Direction in 2026.
Hey, I'm here for the yacht rock. I'm here for this. A similar situation to Madalena is awesome. And this one I could picked on right away. I was like, "Oh, this is Your Direction," and they're just doing a really weird intro to it, but it worked. Definitely more upbeat. I do think Your Direction is one of those songs when I heard it live after we got the album version up front. I was a little underwhelmed with how it sounded in the live setting. At first, it sounded a little empty, and they kind of found their way into giving it a fuller sound. But this hit right away, and I think it sounds terrific right off the jump. They've obviously been trying to work on ways to get it a little more upbeat because it is a very popular song. I mean, the studio version is one of their most listened to songs on all the streaming platforms, and I think it's important that they play it. So finding ways to make it exciting for everybody, I think, is clutch.
Yeah, definitely, and we might touch on this, later. But "Give It Time" is also in this set. I definitely feel like there was a strong concerted effort to play songs that are kind of winning in our culture right now. I mean, not to get too off track, but there were reports that there were over 30,000 people at this thing, so it was a very, very big deal, very, very huge festival set for them, and I think that they really wanted to impress. And I think that taking one of your most popular songs and making it so that, at least from my perspective, it works for old Goose fans and new Goose fans. I think that's just a stroke of genius on their part.
Yeah, agreed. It I once again nailed the assignment. I know it's not groundbreaking set list wise. It's all their biggest songs and a big
Sure.
cover thrown in, but it works. And obviously with the dynamic nature of them being jam adjacent, if they don't want to call themselves a jam band, it makes it fun to listen to, even if you've heard these songs a million times. So I really enjoyed it, and we were so starved for Goose that it was fun to listen through. So I know I jumped ahead. I wanted to get any other highlights you have from the show, Mike, because I know it was very exciting for you being there.
Yeah, I mean, the other big bonus was that the sound check was like another full show. I mean, it was kind of strange, but if you got there early enough around 2 o'clock, there was nobody in front of the stage at all. There was probably about, I don't know, 40 to 50 hardcore Goose fans really close to the stage, us included. And you got to watch like an hour and 15 minutes of music. And I mean, full on transitions and circling back to songs from earlier. I mean, it was an actual full on set. Um,
Cool.
that was freaking amazing. I feel like I got two shows in one day from them. Rick was noodling around. You had Trevor kind of, playing some scales on bass. Like it felt legitimate. Um, and they weren't even like really starting to crack down on tickets or anything at that point in the day. So that was just really cool. The other big one, and I think this goes without saying for everyone, but one more Saturday night coming back on a Saturday with that many people. Um, the excitement when the encore starts that way is just, I mean, chills thinking about it again.
Yeah, nice tribute to Bob. His first show since Bob's passing, so it's really really cool to see
Sure.
them do that, even if it's been a few months removed. Like it was awesome to hear that. And um, of note, I don't know if there was more songs than what was on El Goose, but these were the same songs I had heard they played. But the sound check was no repeats from the show, so they played Atlas, My Mind Has Been Consumed by Media, Eminence Front, and California Magic, from my understanding. Um,
And
that sound
circled
right?
back to Atlas at the end. Yeah, circled back to
Back to
Atlas at
Atlas.
the end, so, it just added to the feeling of this is a show.
Yeah, there you go. All
Very
right,
cool.
so that is Jam in the Streets. A great way to start the year, but still felt like an appetizer. So we need to get to our full show, starting with Asheville later this week. But before we get into that, let's get into our flow down and break down some Madhuvan, get into the deep dive. So let's start off with the background of Madhuvan. This is a song obviously around the story of Dhruva and makes reference to the Bhagavatam, the sacred text. Um, but why don't you give us a little bit of background on the story of Dhruva, Mike, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially in its simplest terms, and internet, feel free to correct me because I'll go ahead and caveat this that depending on what version of things or what text you're reading, there's different interpretations. Some of the nuances I may miss out on, but generally speaking, um, Dhruva was the son of a king that had two wives and two sons, and he was not favored by one of the wives and was basically told that he was never ever going to inherit the throne. And so he essentially went into the forest, and when he was in the forest, I'm not going to go out through the entire story, but through a series of events, he basically comes to the opinion that material wealth is not the key to this life. He needs to renounce all of that. Um, and when he did that and basically decided to renounce a material life or the search for one, um, Vishnu basically rewards him. And he was so pleased with him that he grants him wishes, and Dhruva asks for knowledge. And I feel like at its general core, that's kind of what Rick is generally writing about, although he kind of takes the song and makes it a more modern take on that same general thesis of how to live your life.
Yeah, that's a good summary. In many interpretations, that's what my findings were as well. Some say that he was granted the wish of never being forgotten and was placed in the sky as a pole star as well, a symbol of steadfastness and devotion and determination. So a really cool story. Obviously that's kind of the moral around the song as well, in my opinion, is you know determination and renouncing your material possessions is the key to happiness. Um, but yeah, I think that's a good summary of it, and I think the song is very straightforward in that way. Do you have any other interpretations of the song itself, Mike?
Not really necessarily interpretations, but just to kind of like put a bow on it, at least in the version that I'm familiar with. And please, again, give me a little bit of leniency. It's been about 20 years since I took Eastern religions in college. But when he returns to his kingdom, he's received warmly by his family, and he attains the crown at the age of 6. And he ends up ruling for many decades. So, um, essentially, I think, like, just to add on to that message, there's kind of also a general thesis of, if, and this is true in a lot of religions for that matter, if you're willing to give up everything, you can gain everything. And I think that that's kind of the moral of the Dhruva story.
Yeah, and what the song is centered around. And the only other note I'll have is that the word Madhuvan itself is another name for one of the major deities in Hinduism, Krishna. And Krishna is the god of love, compassion, and protection for many. There's different interpretations there as well, as far as my understanding. Again, I'm ignorant, so please correct us if we're getting stuff wrong. But that's what our research told us.
Well, I'm also of the opinion that this is the most complicated religion on planet Earth. Not a bad thing, just like kind of a fact. So when you get into how many different gods there are and how many different interpretations, you can go down a lot of rabbit holes with this. So yeah, please give us grace on this.
Yes, as a non-religious person myself, I find it all very fascinating, and I would love to learn more. But I am ignorant, and I Own that.
He's honest always.
Well, let's get into the song Madhuvan itself. So the first time played, or the first known version at least, was Goosemas 1, December 20th, 2014, at Factory Underground Studio in Norwalk, Connecticut. I have to imagine it was played before this, but this is the first known version. Um, and it was also the third track on their second studio album, Shenanigans Nightclub. I went back and listened to this in preparation for this episode. Did you manage to listen back to the studio cut?
Yeah, fun fact, we've actually been acquiring all the studio albums. I know that that may not be a popular activity for most Goose fans, but at this point I've got everything except for Moon Cabin because it hasn't ever been on vinyl. Um, so I actually think that the Studio Madhuvan on vinyl sounds pretty darn good. I only think this about the vinyl version, but um, I think it's interesting because to me that album almost like works off in sections. So like the first two songs are kind of like a party vibe, and then after that, you know, you've got Madhavan, which we just kind of talked about in broad strokes what that's about, and then it goes into SOS, which is kind of like the emptiness of bar culture. So it kind of gets deep, and then it transitions yet again into Dawn, and so on and so forth. So I think the placement of this song is very interesting. I think that Rick and company definitely knew what they were doing in making it song three.
Yeah, if you think of it thematically, it doesn't necessarily fit at first for me. Like, you know what I mean? But when you listen through it on the album, it
Sure.
flows really well. That the back and forth there of the themes really actually works in a lot of ways. So, um, and that album more than any other they've released really flows all the way through. Whatever your thoughts are on the studio album, like it feels like a show set list in a lot of ways of the way it flows through songs. So, yeah, that's Madhuvan in a nutshell. Let's wrap up the episode here. No need to talk live cuts, right?
Well, I'll also say about the album, it also definitely, if you're familiar, and we've talked about this before as well, it very much goes hand in hand with the movie. So if you've been
Yes,
fortunate enough to see Shenanigans Nightclub, the flow of the album definitely matches the flow of the film. And every time I listen to the album, the two are kind of linked forever in my brain. I'm always going to at least partially think about the film.
it's a masterpiece. Should have won an Oscar.
I agree. What are we doing?
Trevor, at least, best supporting actor.
Sure. I'm into it.
Oh man. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of our episode here, the live cuts. And like we did for the Arcadia episode, we pulled some vintage clips from Facebook and YouTube where we could find them of the band playing some early versions of Madhuvan. Earliest one we could dig up was from King Neptune's Pub in Lake George, New York on April 29th, 2016. And it is wild hearing how raw they sounded on this. The footage is terrible, but I still found myself grooving. And it's a really piano heavy version, weirdly enough. It was not quite the Rick show at this point. Just really fun to go back and see how much they've grown the last 10 years.
1,000,000%. And I'm so thankful that you were able to pull this footage because it's like, I don't know, it feels like it's so much longer ago, like because they've come so far and they've made so much progress as a band. But I mean, even some of these like old clips that involve Peter, like there's just a lot less clarity on and roles are a lot less defined, and that comes through. And for anyone that plays an instrument, like this is a really complex arrangement. This song, if you're mostly familiar with traditional pop music, makes no sense how it's arranged. It's absolute insanity to learn. And so I have a lot of fun watching them play it basically as young kids because there's like a haphazardness to it. And I'm just like, guys, this song is crazy. Like, how are you doing this and not being fully locked in? It's pretty impressive.
How some of these songs are written by like teenagers and young 20s people blows my mind. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not that good at picking my nose, let alone writing a song. So
Well, and it's as deep lyrically as it is musically. Like
yeah.
it hits on both fronts. Like so it's kind of insane that there's even a clip of Madhavan from 2016 that just kind of blew my mind when you sent that over the other day.
Yeah, and in my head too, most of my fandom has been going back and listening to like from 2019, that uh that festival run that they did in 2019 onwards. So going back and hearing Madhuvan still had a lot of the same bones as it does now, with the similar outro and intro and stuff like that, was really cool to hear. Even if it's a lot more raw from these videos.
Yeah, no, it's somewhat sounds like another band is covering it in a couple of them.
Yeah, yeah. So that takes us to our next one. Then let's just jump into this one. It's very similar in a lot of ways. February 11th, 2017, at Pacific Standard Tavern in New Haven, Connecticut. Another one pulled from Facebook. The Facebook Live game was strong back in the day for Goose. And this is another very raw version, but goes into that really familiar speed funk zone we've gotten accustomed to hearing Goose even play now. But it even still, a year later, sounds almost just as raw to me. I mean, they're experimenting with different lineup changes at this point, and
Sure.
different tone and different sounds and stuff like that. But through all that, the chemistry between Rick, Trevor, and Ben at the time is very apparent, even with all that rawness. So it was really fun to go back and watch them play this set too. And the full set was up on Facebook for this song. So I watched the whole show. Like, I just found myself enamored by it, even though they opened with Madhuvan.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, they're doing different guitarists. There's a couple of the videos like Rick's not even like operating as the default lead player because Peter's not there yet, and they don't really have that dynamic quite figured out. So it's interesting. Like you'll see like Rick like focused entirely on rhythm, and you're just like, that's kind of jarring to go back and see that. Um, but it's really wild to me, even though in some of those older videos, specifically the 2016 and 2017 that you found, it does seem a little bit like when they get to the jam part, they're just trying to get out of there alive, but still really fun to watch.
Yeah, no, agreed. It is really fun to go back and, like, I mean, it's still like way more talent than I'll ever have in my pinky finger at this point in
Yeah.
Goose. But it's really cool because they sound so refined now comparatively. It's just like,
Yes.
comparison is the thief of joy, but not in this case. It brings me joy to hear how different it sounds.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So next up on our versions list, I went back through their YouTube channel and found the oldest version of Madhuvan you could find on there from January 14th, 2018, at the Garage Shop in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. And Peter's in the band now. Did you manage to catch this one,
Yes.
Mike?
I did watch this one, and it was already starting to develop more with just the addition of Peter because he's such a, and this gets lost because he mostly plays keys nowadays, but he is such a good guitarist. And this song has, this is a technical term, but it has a lot of freaking hammer-ons in it, and just the effortlessness that they're breezing through those extra technical guitar parts is completely evident. That was my biggest takeaway from this one, is that you definitely notice a level up almost right away.
Yeah, that rawness almost completely goes away by this point, just adding Peter to the band. He's literally been playing the keys for like a month and a half at this point, if that, a month
Yeah.
maybe. Um, and I mean, this is two guitar goose here, but obviously, uh, his impact on the band was immediate. The other thing that stuck out to me with this version was it was actually really Trevor forward for these early days, which kind of surprised me because that went away for many years and kind of has come back in the Cotter area of the band. But it is a lot of fun to see how much more polish there was on this thing, even production wise, with the video and like the cheesy kind of effects they were doing at the time on their videos. But you can really feel
Yeah.
the evolution at this point.
Well, and even just watching like Peter's confidence on stage, like there's just an ease where he just like kind of presents to the audience like, I've got this under control. And the other videos that we were just talking about, there's a little bit of just like hold on for dear life. And so that part's really cool to see live.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So let's go to one of my favorite shows. One of the first shows I started out with listening to Goose, December 14th, 2019, from the Mousetrap in Indianapolis. And this jam, the best word for me to describe it is frenetic. Almost feeling like an old school cartoon chase sequence to me. that moves into like an upbeat, flowing, blissy section with some big chord shots from Rick, some funky runs by Trev, and then Rick, of course, pivoting into shreddy mode. A little bit of a fake out on this one where you think it's going to go into the normal Madhuvan outro before getting one more slow minor groove jam that showcases a lot of the best dynamics between Rick and Ben at the time and what they had during this era. Just a lot of really cool syncopation work between the two of them that was thrown in to take us to the finish line. And it was one of those like stank face, head bobbing grooves. Really fun listen.
Yeah. Yeah, I have extensive notes on this one. I could talk about this Mousetrap show for quite a while, but I'll try and be somewhat brief. They've got a very cool and unique opening section that starts off with like some plucky and short staggered playing before they get into that playful, bouncy back and forth between Peter and Rick that we've all become familiar with. And that driving, I called it like a driving blissy rock progression. That kind of is what blasts things off into the stratosphere for its peak. And then to your point, one of my favorite parts about listening to Madhuvan live is the various ways that they will psych you out. Sometimes you get like, we're going back to Madhuvan, and then it's like 8 extra minutes after that psych out. And then other times it's just like, a brief 1 or 2 minute foray into something else. But they keep you on your toes with this. And this is kind of very much in that same direction where they transition into this like slow moving play on the song's chord progression that they like kind of muddy up and turn into this like vibey minor key atmospheric textured section that sort of sounds like dark 80s music to me, almost like a crime movie or something from that era.
Yeah.
But it just peaks out of this fucking galaxy before coming back to Madhuvan, this time for real. It's one of the better versions out there, and for anyone that hasn't like ventured that far back into Goose World, like definitely go back to 2019 and check out this Mousetrap show.
Yeah, it's a great listen front to back. I know I made the horrible take on the hot takes episode that I don't go back and listen to full shows. I mean, there's obviously exceptions, and this Mousetrap show is one on my list that I go back to a lot.
Folks, he's been flip flopping ever since that episode. He listens
I
to so much
know
old Goose.
I'm a flip flopper. All right, like I was caught up in the Cotter hype, but now I'm back on vintage Goose.
We're happy to have you back. I think that that exodus lasted all of a day.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't get ahead of myself like that anymore. I gotta have a Mulligans episode. All right. So next up is the first Jam of the Year winner, 2020, September 16th, 2020, from South Farms in Morris, Connecticut. And I think this was a great call by the fans who voted at the time for this Jam of the Year. What did you think about this one, man?
The main thing that jumps out at me with this one, and man, is it like a strap into your seat for this, but after they kind of get situated into the jam, Rick just takes off into these spiraling lines that sound like they're shooting out of the atmosphere. And there's just this real, like, triumphant feel to the first section that feels like super uplifting, like it should be at the end of the Breakfast Club or something like that. Like it just, you're on a high. And yeah, don't you forget about me type vibes. But they find all these creative ways to come back together and hit these peaks together, Peter and Rick in unison, and it's so fun to listen to, like even this early on, the evidence of their chemistry. But this definitely is the Rick show, make no mistake about it, in the best way possible. They have like some of those topsy-turvy psychedelic funhouse vibes, and they get into this fast-paced minor key freight train, and it peaks into some uplifting chords, back to the train, into Dark Goose, back to the train even faster, and round to the finish. You really have to like start doing breathing exercises after you finish this one.
Yeah, I can tell you're getting excited talking about it. You know,
it's so good, man.
You're picking up the pace just like the song did by the end, getting excited talking about it. But
yeah,
some stuff that stood out to me was I love the triplet feel going into the jam early on, with Ben showing some of his jazzy side with some great work on the ride cymbal to get started. And then, yeah, you talked about it. You feel like you're on cloud 9 getting into this thing, can conquer the world. And then it gets frenetic again. Like, that's the best word I have to describe these two jams back to back. And I was talking about cartoons earlier. This is like the equivalent of the Road Runner, just like leaving a trail of fire behind it by the end of this thing. You know what I mean?
yes.
Like, it's electric. electric.
That's a great
Great.
way to say it. I'm gonna now think of this as the Roadrunner jam.
Yeah, it is electric. Just a great jam. And when you talk about rawness by this point in Goose lore, a lot of that's gone. Like there's obviously
Yeah.
some stuff they've improved on since then, and they've improved their musicianship quite a bit, in my opinion. But man, they still have some jams that could rank up with the top ones of 2024, 2025 in this era.
Well, it's crazy. This is during COVID. Like to accomplish a jam like this at that time period when a lot of musicians hadn't even played in like 8 or 9 months, like just
Hmm.
insanity.
Insane. And we're not done with 2020 because another version that we picked out was from October 3rd, 2020, from Swansea, New Hampshire, another drive-in show. And this is another two distinct segment jam here with another fake out in between. So, what'd you think about this one, Mike?
I won't wax as poetic about this one, but to be fair to me, the last one was a jam of the year, so I kind of had to. But this one's got a lot of different styles at the beginning, but Rick kind of latches on to this like repeating melodic riff that he keeps coming back to on multiple occasions. And I think Ben is kind of the main event here. He is ecstatically and ferociously driving this jam towards a powerful conclusion. I think he's driving the train, but it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, you say driving the train. That's one thing I we've discussed ad nauseum on this show is how much you can notice the shift in dynamics on jams since Cotter joined. And something I noticed, especially with these early versions of Madhuvan, which improved over time when Ben was in the band, like in the later years, was that it's like all foot on the gas, on the like pushing it down to the floor, immediately hyper speed drumming just from the jump. Like no matter how quiet, how loud it was, he was just pushing the pace to like 200 miles an hour. Um, and it's fun. Like it's not like a necessarily a bad thing. It's just everything was like, let's get to peaking, baby, and it just top gear all the way through. Um, you think you simmer down from the first peak, the drumming's still going, like just as fast as it was at the peak, and then you're building to another peak into the Madhuvan outro, which is also at warp speed. So, um, yeah, it is really interesting hearing that dynamic that I don't feel like we're gonna hear with Cotter almost ever, where it's like dreamy, like quiet zone with everyone else, and the drums are just going like ding 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 like crazy, like ride cymbal and like machine gun snare going on. Like it's a cool dynamic.
Yeah, I will say that was the one thing that kind of stood out about the Ben era is that there are a lot of times where it's almost like he's saying to the band, but not saying out loud, like, come on, guys, join me up here. Let's party. That's kind of the vibe that he's giving a lot of times where he's kind of forcing Rick's hand to speed it up.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like almost like breakbeat in a lot of ways, like something you expect to hear in like EDM or something, some of the more niche genres. Um,
Yeah.
so it does sound cool. It's just there's just no levels to it on some of these Madhuvans. It's just like all gas on the drums, and everyone else is like going up and down.
Yep. I agree.
So let's move into 2021 here. Let's start with we're gonna have some honorable mentions because we can't get to every Madhuvan here because there's just way too many good ones. There's literally only one bad version I can think of Madhuvan, and that is the Rip It version that I witnessed in Westville because they went into Whip It instead of giving me 2 minutes of a jam. Um, but anyway, June 19th, 2021, Legend Valley in Thornville, Ohio. And this is part of a delicious Madhuvan Moby Madhuvan sandwich. And, coming out of that final chorus on the first part, get the normal guitar solo, and then it's into a slow, emotional Moby, which is just always the most special thing to hear. I can't even think of one example where Moby is a bad time. And then we get into the real meat and potatoes of the jam on the second half of this thing. So, what'd you think about this one, Mike?
Yeah, I'll let you take the floor if you've got more than me, but I'm kind of short and sweet on this one. To your point on the last one, this is another one where I feel like Ben is kind of just like not letting off the gas at all, but it's 13 minutes of a runaway freight train. And there's a lot of good dueling guitar work. Nothing like really specifically stands out to me. I think the next one I'm going to wax poetic about is when we get to 2022. But I mean, I'm definitely going to say this is must hear if you haven't listened to it. But I mean, pretty much anything from Legend Valley is always must hear. Um, like that's just places is very special, and special things happen for Goose when they're there. But the coolest thing to me about this one is it's kind of standard fare, hold on to your seat type of freight train stuff, but it's just really neat that it's coming out of a Moby. I don't know. I'd have to look, but I don't think that's happened since in a Madhuvan.
You're putting me on the spot, and I don't remember either. But
I'll
we'll
go
figure
back and
that
look and
answer
be
out too
wrong,
late.
but I don't think it's been a sandwich before.
No, and the other cool part about this jam to me is it is a runaway freight train, but it hits this one point like middle of the way through it, actually relatively early on, where you feel like you're going runaway freight train moving towards a peak, and they do this like 4 bar back and forth of like rager and then thoughtful quiet and 4 bars and then rager, and it goes like up down like a seesaw for a while there, and then it gets to be another drag race to the finish line of burst of energy, another road runner on this one.
And they use that back and forth technique in, we'll talk about it later, but the Alpharetta Madhuvan, where you're kind of,
Yes.
are we going back to Madhuvan? No, we're not. Were we going back? No, we're not. And I always think that's fun.
And to your point, also, I thought of this as you were saying it, and a little tangent was Madhuvan is always has strong years, but in the pantheon of Madhuvan years, I think 2021 was actually kind of like a quote unquote down year relative to some of the other ones where a lot of other songs shined. Like Arcadia had a really good 2021, for instance. We talked about, I feel like, 10 versions from that year.
Yeah.
And Madhuvan, it was awesome, but it just didn't. I think they were focused on making other songs kind of more Monster Jam vehicles at the time. I don't know, it's hard to say.
That is a super good call. I really appreciate you saying that, because as I think about it, I would probably pick 2021 as the least strong year as well for this song.
Yeah, I mean, I still have like 5 versions pulled up here
Yeah,
that I love, but you know what I mean.
but still
For
go listen to these
Madhuvan,
because they are awesome.
if there's not 10 versions that are like on my list, it's like wow, I'm appalled.
Yeah.
Uh, so next up for 2021, we picked one more we're going to talk in depth about before our honorable mentions, but let's go with November 11th, 2021, from the historic Scoot Inn in Austin, Texas. And this is just a happy little guy, happy little Madhuvan, very very chill vibes. Rick's kind of channeling some soulful Allman Brothers y vibes early, and just continues to build to a explosive, joyful peak of pure happiness. 13 minutes of building for that, and then surprise, we're going into the most twisted, bubbling, sludgy, dark tension section I think I've ever heard in my life. No, and up to this point in Goose lore, maybe. Um, and it feels like almost like inescapable, like you're singing in quicksand, and then you just punch through the mud and take us to the finish line. But a pretty unique version, all things said.
Yeah, I like this one a lot because it's not the longest, but it's really cool that it hits that joyous peak early. There's a lot of Madhuvans that kind of take a little while to stretch their legs, and a lot of the highlights are on the second half of the jam. This one has a highlight really early on. Like you're just immediately like, oh, amazing bliss peak. What are we doing? That's kind of interesting. Before it goes into the darkness that you might normally more associate with Madhuvan. But that early joyous bliss peak is really hard not to smile during. It's really unique.
Yeah, it's the best.
Definitely.
Let's talk about honorable mentions here. Just a few versions I picked out. If you have any other ones, let me know. But I think this is it. We have May 9th, 2021, from the Caverns Above Ground Amphitheater in Pelham, Tennessee. Then we have the versions from June 12th, 2021, from the Westville Music Bowl, New Haven. Obviously, they've been playing there forever now. And then October 29th, 2021, from the State Theater in Portland, Maine. Was there any I missed here?
No. Um, I love the June 12th from Westville. It's the Secret Agent Madhuvan. I've seen them do that before, and that's really satisfying. It works really good out of the Madhuvan chaos to get that sandwich. Um, But I think that out of 2021, my favorite probably is the Portland, Maine version.
That's a
And
good
I
one.
mean, a little bit of that is I'm biased towards funk, and they hit a really, really incredible funk zone in that one for several minutes. Um, but yeah, anything that you've got on these, I'd love to hear about.
No, I agree with you. The Portland, Maine one was the only one I really wanted to touch on more, but I was just trying to cut down on time for this episode. It's a great funk jam on this one through and through. A really fun listen. That one flies by. If you want something to like make your cleaning feel like it's going by in a flash or something around the house, that's a version to
Yeah,
listen to.
great call.
All right, so moving into 2022, we still got 4 more years to discuss of this thing, and we're already almost an hour into this episode. June 8th, 2022, from Art Park in Lewiston, New York. From the jump on this one, you can really feel the amount of work that Peter had been doing to like work on texture work during jams and stuff like that, and you really feel the haze on this one right away. It's like a floating feeling early on, while Rick, Trevor, and Ben are all in peak form, complimenting each other in this happy zone. And then Trevor and Ben locking down that rhythm section are really nailing the dynamics. Like, this is a change from what we were talking about of like the straight energy all the way through. It really felt like much more focus was on the dynamics by this point in the Ben era of Goose. Um, I was not in attendance for this jam, obviously, but I have to imagine for the second half of this jam, this was another one of those millennial stank face moments of funk that all of us millennials do for some reason, where we make that like face while we dance and have Gen Z make fun of us. But it's just a sick, mellow, bob your head groove that's very unique in the plethora of Madhuvans that we've discussed so far.
Yeah, I think this one gets slept on because it's behind like arguably one of the five greatest Madavans by about a week.
Yeah.
So it does get overlooked, and it should not, because this one is also unique because it has a really cool, beautiful mid jam cool down, and then it kind of becomes the Rick show from there. But part of the fun of going back through all these old Madavans is just the different structures of the jam, and this is another unique structure.
Oh yes, it is, and you're totally right about it being overlooked. I didn't even think about that when I was putting it in. I was like, man, this version's so good. Why does no one talk about this one? It is only a week out from the next one we're going to talk
We're about
about.
to explain why.
So let's get into that. June 15th, 2022, Red Hat Amphitheater in Raleigh, North Carolina. What can be said about this version? 2022 Jam of the Year. Let's hear it, Mike. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, so as weak as we think 2021 was, 2022 has an argument to be one of the best years of Monavon. I mean, there are just some. We're not going to have enough time to get into all of them, and it makes me sad. But the Raleigh one is so unique. It's got a lot of evil at the beginning runway, but they get into this like bluesy feel that it wanders primarily through the overlapping guitars in perfect sync, and they start to go sideways into some psychedelic flares of tension, and then it escalates into like extra angry psychedelic flamethrower of a metal section. This makes the angry section of Big Modern shit its pants. um Teases of the Madhavan ending here in a way you will rarely ever hear it. They downshift into this gorgy blissy section where you're like, where the hell did this come from, before giving way to things that only Rick can do, and a solo that truly screams from the heavens before coming back to the ending you always expect. Like literally, no wonder this was Jam of the Year.
Yeah, this holds up with the best of Goose. Still,
Yeah,
it's terrific. I describe the beginning as like lost in space, exploring the corners of the universe, and then getting sucked through a wormhole of metal shows. Like like the wormhole is just playing metal music, and it's unreal. It's unreal. It's like
yeah,
peak head banging Goose. It's up there with like the energy from the almost Jam of the Year winner from this year, the Madhuvan from Milwaukee. It's up there. And that
yeah,
simmer down into that stunning heavenly bliss section. The emotional soloing from Rick, you talked about it. It's up there with me with like the Mission Arcadia for me of like some of the most emotional melodic soloing that Rick had done up to this point. Um, just unreal,
yeah.
an unreal ride. If there's one Madhuvan that I recommend you listen to on this entire episode, and you've been listening just to like the Cotter era, and you're a newer fan, like this is the one I would suggest the most. I think.
I 1,000,000% agree. There's zero disagreement on that. If you have not had a lot of experience with older Goose, there's no better place to start than this version.
Yeah, it's unreal, unreal. If you like closed your eyes and were told this was from a 2024 show or 2025 show, you might believe it. Honestly, at some points.
Yeah, excellent call.
So again, way too many honorable mentions to get into on this one, but I'll pick out one more. October 7th, 2022, the Joy Theater in New Orleans. This version starts out really like lo-fi, chill, and you think, wow, this is gonna be like a really pretty chill Madhuvan. No, you're wrong. It's just gonna be peaks on peaks. Buy one, get 3 free peaks. Once you think you hit a peak, it just keeps escalating to the moon.
Yeah. No, this is the one that I would have called out as well. I think that it gets into a flying peak that's just truly soaring, and I think the driving progression that pushes forward, it's really courtesy of some really incredible playing from Trevor, which great to see my boy stepping out these years ago because that wasn't, to your point earlier, as common of a thing back then, and this one just keeps going up peak after peak. There are small differences and changes to the nuances of each section, but the common thread is it just insists on moving forward. And if you enjoy dance parties and nonstop tempo, this one might be perfect for you.
Yeah, it's actually an early example that was not as consistent of a thing as we get now of like a full band build to the finish, and like just when you think you've hit the top of the peak, it just keeps going. It's a terrific ride and really fun. 2022 was like probably the most fun I had listening back on this episode. Honestly, I
Yeah.
listened to what feels like 50 versions of Modivon. I don't know how many they played that year, but I probably listened to every single one at multiple times because I enjoyed all of them, and it was hard to cut it down on this episode. But let's shout out a few more. Uh, February 2nd, 2022, 2222, the Midtown Ballroom in Bend, Oregon. Then we got March 9th, 2022, from the Royal Oak Music Theater in Royal Oak, Michigan. Then we got May 27th, 2022, another great version from the West Music Bowl in New Haven. Man, we probably should have picked one of those two because those are both really good versions.
Yep.
No wonder I got a Rip It version. They play a lot of great Madhuvans there. They don't need to play another one. Um, then we got both November 13th and November 18th of 2022 from the Cool Insuring Arena in Glen Falls, New York, and the War Memorial Arena in Syracuse. Shouting out that last version that was featuring Trey Anastasio on guitar. One of the great, great songs from that tour, the Tab Goose tour. Anything on any of these you wanted to shout out real quick, Mike? Or we're gonna have a playlist of all of these for y'all to listen to, but
Yeah.
it's like 13 hours of music. So, um,
Obviously, the Trey one's great. I'll just tell the people at home that I had my most other notes were probably on the Midtown Ballroom from Bend, Oregon in February. I'm not going to go into my lengthy notes on that one, but I wrote lengthy notes because it's really good and you should listen to it.
yeah, it's absolutely terrific. That it's kind of funny that in 2021 I talked about leaving off ones I didn't want to leave off. This is similar in that vein where this is another one that's a funk fest that I really enjoyed and it flies by. Like in prep for
Yeah.
this episode, like I found myself going through the playlist and like trying to listen to the ones we drilled down on to highlight more, and then I just kept listening to this Midtown Ballroom one, like by accident. I was just like, oh, it came on again. I guess I got to listen to this for 20x minutes.
Well, I will say one specific thing. I'm not going to go into a whole long deal, but just one sentence on it. It has these tension sections that are still somehow uplifting. That's the really cool thing
Yeah,
you should listen to when you go back to it. It's very, very neat to hear them pull that off.
exactly. It's like dark funk. I don't know how to
Yeah.
describe it. It's very very
It's
cool.
really cool, though.
All right, so that's 2022. Maybe the year of Madhuvan. We'll see. We'll figure that out as we go. But
Yeah.
2023, the first version I want to shout out is from April 1st from the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. I know you love this run. I love this run. We were on WTED talking about the show prior to this one. but this is a great run all around. But what'd you think about the Madhuvan from night 3?
It's definitely not my highlight, but it's it's very long and it's very good. I'll just say that it's got a dark synthy ambiance, and it ends up being very like melodic and soaring. And then it's got a raging Madhuvan finish. It's a fantastic improv journey, and it's got a lot of everything in it. I don't think like any one thing stands out to me, but very good listen.
It is a great listen. I my only note I wrote down, which is the dumbest note ever, was that the beginning reminds me of when you're watching one of those nature shows and you're following like a rare predator through the jungle or something. Like it sounds like literally a nature show, and then it's quiet yet tense, and they've somehow managed to finagle that into like this smooth oasis of bliss before moving into the melodic peak to take us to the finish line. But I just found the way they navigated this one to be very, very interesting because it's a set of soundscapes that you would not normally piece together in a Madhuvan.
No, and that's the other cool thing that's been good about this exercise is we're hearing a lot more instances of when Bliss was in Madhuvan, and obviously we got some of that at this most recent Goosemas, which was really cool to see that come back. But it used to be a pretty common thing back in the day to have the darkness mixed with the light.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's become rare in this day and age, like you said. But I loved going back and listening to it.
Yeah.
So next up here, June 25th, 2023, from Electric Forest in Rothbury, Michigan. Wow. That's all I'm going to say about this one. Wow, this is a festival, Madhuvan, and somehow is
Yeah.
one of the best ones of this entire exercise.
People at home don't know, but he jumped over a few to get to this one. And funny enough, this is the only 2023 version that I wrote extensive notes on. So thanks, Alex. But no, this one has a dark, extremely psychedelic start to it. It's got crazy, eerie tones galore. Sounds like a dark portal to the upside down or something, to be honest with you, is the vibe that I'm getting. But Rick gradually nudges the band to push the pace a bit. It's not Ben pushing it, it's Rick. And it slowly builds into this ominous driving core, propelling forward endlessly. It gives you a fake back into Madhuvan around the 12-minute mark, which would make sense at a festival set. But instead, they pivot into this uplifting progression that would feel at home at the end of like a Mist or a Hunger Site. And it's just got that glorious tumble from Philly soloing from Rick. It lasts a few minutes before moving into this like rapid funk section for a brief minute. And then it gets into this like really interesting reggae funk groove with like some just really dynamic playing from Trevor before coming back to Madhuvan. And this is just a really good journey all around. And I can't believe my ears that this is at a festival.
I know. My first thought listening back was, I mean, like as a fan, I was listening to these shows and not like think about the context of like, oh, this is a music festival where they're trying to find new fans. And I don't think we've ever heard a version to this point in this exercise where they're getting like as demented as Rick and Peter can get to start and like both playing off each other in this like sinister way. Like it doesn't seem like it'd be the most appealing way to showcase their talents, but I love it. Um,
Yeah.
in the Madhuvan fake out was like a staple of these earlier versions too. I mean, we say early, this is fairly modern at this point, but um, really surprised they didn't take that exit ramp and try to squeeze more songs in for a festival set. They're just like, F it, let's go. This is rocking, and we're gonna have another section here. And that ending section is really cool. Like really experimental sounding rock funk fusion that's going on, and that somehow manages to morph its way back into the outro. I really found that to be very fun.
Yeah, this one is definitely first and last sections are the most interesting, but those first and last sections are as unique as you'll find with this song. So um the fake works so great because they're at a festival and at 12 minutes you're like, yeah, this is definitely the ending point. And then they show you a whole nother gear that I don't know that we've seen that type of jamming from them since. So excellent,
Right
excellent
on.
listen.
Yeah, it's terrific. And again, we'll have a playlist of all these versions and our honorable mentions, and it's gonna be 13 hours of music for you to listen to. So enjoy.
I've taken the playlist on a test run and it takes me a few days to get through it every time. So I hope y'all enjoy it, but it's a lot of Madhuvan.
It's a lot of Madhuvan. But I mean, Hey, that's what happens when it's one of the best songs in the catalog, right?
Yeah. What did we get for the Arcadia deep dive? I think it was like 17 songs, and we're like over double that for this song. So I mean, it just tells you like it's always been a great jam vehicle.
Yeah, yeah, it's peak. It's the best of Goose in a lot of ways. But
Yes.
let's keep going here before we're here all
Sure.
night. November 20th, 2023 was the last version I had handpicked out for this year, just to keep things moving. The Electric Ballroom in London in the UK. Um, and this jam starts off with surprising vocal lines in it, where the band's repeating DDS and the Doctor will see you now over top of like this kind of low key, joyful vibe that I can only really describe as like frolicking and rolling grass fields with a herd of sheep in the most perfect weather you can imagine. But then you hear these weird vocal lines going on. The Doctor will see you now. Um, some Severance vibes there. The
Yeah.
goats. Uh, yeah, it's even the synth that Peter's using on this thing. It sounds like a flute or something. It's just like so peaceful. But then Ben does his thing, ramps this thing up, hitting double time, takes us into our first peak, and then takes us into the second half of this jam that really feels just like a very Type One slow build ramp into the Madhuvan outro. But the intro is the interesting part of this one, and I thought it was really interesting having those weird vocal lines. And like to this day, someone can tell me what the hell the DDS means.
No freaking idea. The only thing I'll say about this is that the one cool thing about Ben always speeding things up, even when it's peaceful and beautiful, is that you do get these really soaring but beautiful bliss jams, and it gives you a feeling of flying. And I think that this was easily one of the best jams from Euro Tour that year.
Yeah, if not the highlight of that tour, it's
Yeah,
up there, top five. So I agree. Honorable mentions. These are the ones that I didn't dive deep
so
into, but
many.
there's lots to say. Let's go March 9th, 2023 at the Cap in Port Chester, New York. And we got April 28th at the Warfield in San Francisco. And the last one I have marked here is November 3rd of 2023 at Trabendo in Paris, France. Any that I missed there, Mike?
Uh, just a couple that I would add: July 6, 2023, Thompson's Point, Portland, Maine.
Yes.
September 13th, Leader Bank Pavilion, Boston. Um, 10-1, Brooklyn Bowl, Vegas. Um, and I think that about covers it. But 2023 was a pretty good year for Madhuvan as well. Not as good as 2022, but pretty solid.
Yeah. From here on out, it's like the song that you want to catch if you're a jam fan for Goose.
Yeah. I mean, they're at the peaks of their powers from 2022 on.
Oh, yes. So now we're getting into the Cotter era. And this is when things take a shift in the dynamics, and the Madhuvans get a lot more dark jam focused, in my opinion. But let's start off with April 9th, 2024 at the Cap in Port Chester once again. Cotter's first Madhuvan, baby's first mod, and he crushed it. I know you love this Cap
Yeah.
run more than almost anybody on earth, so let's hear your thoughts, Mike.
Well, I mean, it may not be popular opinion anymore, but I still think this is their goated run. For me, this Cap run is the ultimate Goose run. But this jam in particular, it starts again with a sinister motif, like you said. That kind of becomes the norm. But Peter gets this delayed vibe as the rest of the band enters and gradually builds into this like beautiful but evil churning feeling. And then at the apex, Rick kind of signals to Cotter and the drums drive forward into double time, and it just kind of comes home in a blaze of glory.
And yeah, that better covers it. I did think that I did think that it was cool at this point in Goose history, hearing this thing start from like a whisper and build into what it was, and it was like an early example of the full band jam we're so accustomed to with Cotter now. Um, but I also really like that kind of like Middle Eastern flair that was to that early part in the jam that uh, had Peter over the top of it playing the vintage vibe, which gave it a really interesting dynamic there. It's not a soundscape you'd expect to hear, but it sounds really, really cool. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's Cotter's first Madhuvan, and it's a runaway freight train. that's what we expect with Madhuvan, and that's what we got. So he crushed the assignment.
Vintage Vibe had an interesting year in 2024.
I love the vintage vibe. That's my hot take. Is I bring the vintage
Yeah,
vibe back. I love that sound.
yeah, it is great.
Let's go to June 8th, 2024 at Fiddler's Green in Greenwood Village, Colorado. Um, this was up there as one of the Jam of the Year contenders. Did not make the cut over the Philly Tumble, my boy. But this probably would get my vote if I was voting today without the attendance bias. Listening back to it, I really, really, really had a lot of fun listening back to this, and I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it because I was a Philly Tumble stan. Um, so what'd you think about this one, Mike?
I'll be honest, it's not my favorite. It covers a lot of ground, so I always find it to be one of the more interesting listens. The first section for me up until about, I don't know, maybe minute 17 or so, it's a little bit too much in the aimless ambient space for my particular taste. They definitely get it going from there. They get into a funkier mode, they get into a darker mode. And like I said, it kind of covers a whole range of sounds and they're definitely exploring. And so I definitely find it to be one of the more interesting listens from 2024, and it's super comprehensive at its 34-minute length or whatever it is. But that early section worked really well and I think was the highlight for a lot of people. But for me, it was the exact opposite. I kind of found myself bored during the first section most times that I listened back to this.
Hey, that's fair because I felt a lot of that when I was listening back in 2024. And now, like for whatever reason, listening back for this, it's working for me. I'm super
Yeah.
into it, and another version where we start off lost in space, another uncomfortable trip through the cosmos. But you can really hear the level up on, especially on the Peter side of things, with like disarming sirens and the alien noises, and the band's happy to let this section breathe with some really, really great bass work from Trevor, kind of being the highlight. And that pivot into the darker metal feels really where things start getting going, like you said. But I just really love once the intensity ramps up, it's some of the best Goose we've heard in this Cotter era. So, first section aside, like you still get a full 17-ish minutes of like Rager Goose on this thing. So, um, Trevor's so heavy and up front too. If you're a Trevor person, this is a great one.
Yeah, and I mean, I still think I had it ranked fairly decently high for Jam of the Year. So it wasn't like I, shunned it entirely. It just wasn't one that I came back to as often as some of the other ones from 2024.
Well, yeah, and once again, I'm being hasty because the other version of Madhuvan from 2024 that I really loved is the next one we'll bring up from September 1st, 2024, PNC Bank Arts Center in Holmdel, my hometown show for this year. Debut of Big Modern, speaking of BigModern.com. Uh,
Yeah.
call it attendance bias, whatever, but this was also up there as one of my favorite versions of the year. And I think that's because this was such a great showcase of Peter on this one too. Like Peter, everyone talks about like the Cotter level up and the Trevor level up at this point in the band. The Peter level up, in my opinion, too, was just insane in 2024.
Yeah.
This is another one. It's Madhuvan. You're starting off slow generally, and it's immediately hitting you in the face with this like flowy synth work, like a laser picking you up into an alien spaceship for this version of the space ride. And I mean, what better setting than the flying saucer that is the PNC Bank Art Center in Homedale? Like the roof looks like an alien ship. Um,
Yeah.
but in the background, you can hear Rick finding this like metal riff that he latches onto, but slowly creeping up, and then it just like a small kid playing with his first stereo. It's like he's taking the dial and just cranking it up all the way to the top, and then bringing it down, and cranking it up and bringing it down. Like it's a lot of quick dynamic shifts on this one, and it's full on metal when it gets loud. Like it's just unreal. And then the back half second section of this jam is just a speedy section where Peter's doing like a lot of really brisk work on the vintage vibe. Again, great year for the vintage vibe. Um, and it leads to this scorching fast lightning rock build all the way to the Modifon outro. And I think of all the Goose shows I've been to, I think this is still the loudest I've ever heard them. Like from the shows I've attended
Yeah.
was this Madhuvan. It was so loud that I was like, "Oh my god, I think I'm gonna have permanent hearing damage," but I'm also very happy.
I mean, this was one of my favorite shows of 2024. I listened to this one, probably top 5 as far as shows listened to, and this was my second favorite Madhuvan from the year. So, I mean, I'm right there with you. I won't have too much to add because you did a great job, but I think the combination of Peter's synth work and the vintage vibe, and just how minor key this stays, it's just a really fun and exciting freight train, like so many Madhuvans are. And I think I had this in my top 12 or so jam of the years from 2024. So very highly regarded by me for sure.
Oh, it's so good. If you haven't listened to this one in a while, or didn't get the hype in 2024, give it a listen with fresh ears. It's a really fun ride. It's not as long as some of the other big jam of the year contender types, but it's a great listen. But let's
Yeah.
get to your favorite Madhuvan here. I yapped about the last one, so let's get into your favorite from September 26th, 2024, from the Cal Coast Credit Union Amphitheater in San Diego. And this was your jam of the year that year. Is it still your jam of the year?
From 2024, yeah, I think it's moved down to my second or third favorite Madhuvan probably now because there's two from 2025 that I think I like a little bit more. But it's definitely at least top 5 Madhuvans for me. Um,
Nice.
and obviously, it's not the best. It's very good for my personal taste, and I think that me and Sim Turner are aligned on this one being overlooked by a lot of the community. But I think it's got a really cool exploratory texture early on, similar to the spaces from the much more accomplished Madhuvan from Colorado, before growing into like this psychedelic frenetic peak. And they move into this section that sounds like a typical transition back to Madhuvan, but this has like all the grit and grime and attitude of like an older Scorsese film. And instead of going straight back into it, they instead keep squeezing more out of this theme for a few more minutes before they finally relent and come back to the finale. But the last 8 minutes of this version are, for me anyways, some of my favorite goose to come back and listen to even to this day. It's super familiar and yet at the same time pretty unique due to the abundance of nuance that I find in it every time I go back.
Fun is the best way to describe it. Like, and I love hearing you gush about it. There are layers on layers to this thing, but the key behind all of it is just a good time with some more of that experimental funk sound that I can't really describe in a lot of ways better than that. But just a rocking good time by the end of this thing, and it's some of the most high energy goose you'll ever hear.
And if you are going back for the first time in a while or the first time ever, I would just ask you to, right about 7 minutes left or so, Peter hits this run of 3 notes on the piano that when Rick mirrors it about a minute later, it is one of the most, I don't know, it feels like his guitar is actually slicing into you. It is piercing, and it is one of the coolest goose moments I've ever experienced.
Yeah, and then just after that, Trevor's doing like this crazy lick by the end of the song. It's like the Trevor
Yeah.
show. It the
Yeah.
back and forth is really fun on this one.
Yeah. Underrated.
All right, so that's the main ones we wanted to focus on in 2024. A few more let's shout out here. Let's do September 11th, 24 at the Salt Shed in Chicago. That's a really fun one. And then I want to shout out your show from November 7th, 2024 in Pittsburgh at the Peterson Event Center, the Madhuvan Autumn Crossing Sandwich. Just got to shout out an Autumn Crossing Sandwich. Come on. That's some cool shit.
And one of the prettiest, most gorgeous Madhuvans you will ever hear in your entire life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it fit the theme of the whole run. Like it was very, very well done. So that wraps up 2024 here. Let's get into 2025, the most recent Madhuvans we have. And we'll start. Let's skip over that February run. No one likes those shows. No, we
How did
got
I
to
know you
talk
were going to
about,
say that?
we're going to talk Dark February. Come on. We've gushed at length
Yeah.
about these versions. Let's start with the Milwaukee version from February 7th, 2025 at the Miller High Life Theater. Again, we've gushed about this one at length. This is a straight descent into the pits of hell with some of the greatest two guitar goose we've ever heard. And that like tension filled dark power chord bass space that escalates into like the speedy dark rocking section that winds up in triumph, like you're punching your way out of hell itself, is unreal.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite as evil as the one we're gonna talk about here in a second that happens a week later, but it's definitely a dark rock progression. And I want to shout out Trevor because he just has this amazing bass line that they all follow into like this extremely aggressive section reminiscent of, alternative metal bands of old. But this goes on for a few minutes before Rick leads them into the soaring rock finish that flies high at a million miles an hour. I think the themes here are more fully fleshed out, just slightly over the Grand Rapids version, but both are no doubts huge standouts for the year and Madhuvan in general. And you can't make any list of Madhuvans without talking about the February 2025. And I would argue this is the greatest year of Madhuvan to date, narrowly edging 2022, maybe not in number, but in quality.
And it's up there. I agree. That was my preferred version too, but 8 days later, we got another amazing version, February 15th, 2025, from GLC Live at 20 Monroe in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Y'all's overwhelming choice is the encore in our dream set list, and for great reason, in my opinion. Arguably the greatest encore this band's ever played. I think so.
Yeah.
76 Madhuvan, like unreal. It put a bow on a really, really great February. The churning unease on this one, it is definitely more uneasy feeling than just like the more palatable darkness of the Milwaukee version, in my opinion. Um,
Yeah.
and the back and forth between Peter, Rick, and Trevor, like coming and building tension in their own ways, is unlike anything I think we've ever heard from Goose to this point and since. At least at that scale where it lasted for so long. Um, and then this thing just becomes a demented house of horrors, but a speedier one after that sludge fest to
Yeah.
start. Some of the most unique dark soundscapes we've ever heard from Goose that somehow forms into clarity and closes out the run on that high of the Madhuban outro. But I'm curious about your thoughts on this one too, Mike.
It's just filthy. It had to be included on any list of Madhuvans, like I said. It's very angular and discordant from the jump. It's got so much in common with like the Westville Rockdale. I think it's arguably the most evil two guitar Goose has ever sounded. But at the same time, like it's so fresh, everything they're doing here. They haven't done most of the things they do in this jam before. And the early section finds a way to combine that angular playing with like a certain swampy and messy, distorted off kilter, funky feel, but the middle like fully embraces the unhinged, scary, haunted mirror funhouse vibes. And when they do get back to Madhuvan, there's like a long and prolonged exploration of what the reentry into the song proper would sound like if you put like 100% anger and fury into it. Um, this jam requires multiple seatbelts and a height requirement to board, but it's so beyond worth it.
And if you're going back and listening to Madhuvans and you're not watching the video on some of these, this is when I suggest you
Oh yeah,
watch Getty's work on, in particular, some of the most impressive work Getty's ever done on a song in any
yeah, maybe
capacity.
the best. Yeah,
The way he's syncing up the lights with some of the crazy stuff that they're doing in this Madhuvan is unreal.
yeah, that's a great call, Alex. It might be the best work he's ever done.
Let's pull one more from 2025 because I want you to gush about it mostly. Your jam of the year from your Alpharetta show on September 26th, 2025 at Ameris Bank Amphitheater. You have the floor, my friend.
Hopefully this is my last time ranting about it because I know everyone is sick of me talking about this damn thing. I can't promise it'll be the last time, but I'll try my best. But I've spoken about it ad nauseum. In its simplest terms, what I feel like makes this so special is the first section of the jam is very dark and discordant, like the Grand Rapids version we just talked about. It ends between 12 and 15 minutes and does this somewhat unique thing where they're going back and forth to Madhuvan, but not really, and constantly faking you out like 6 or 7 times. And you think they're going to go to like a mid-length version before they go into this bliss section, and they peak like the best of an EMG before descending back into Madhuvan at the end for real this time. And I think in its own way, it kind of combines the best of the dark rock of Milwaukee, the darkness of Grand Rapids, but also gives you this kind of fun bonus of this alternating theme and a little bit of the EMG Bliss Peak. And so to me, I felt like overall, all around, this was the best Madhuvan of last year, and it's my favorite Madhuvan ever. But the community didn't see it that way, and that makes me sad. But it is what it is.
Michael, it's okay to be different, man. You're wrong because Milwaukee was
Yeah,
better. No, I'm just
yeah.
kidding.
It was proven to be true, but yeah.
No, man. This was a fun ride, and my only notes I wrote down for this exercise, I listened back again because my first note was let Mikey gush on this one because he has way more to say than I ever will. But I did pick out the same thing where it feels like it was picking and choosing its favorite flavors of darkness from Milwaukee and Grand Rapids in the early section of this thing. And then that post peak section that kind of ramps up into that more celebratory outro jam is really, really a cool vibe compared to what we had heard throughout the rest of the year on Madhuvan.
Yeah, and the Bliss Peak very much reminded me of the great EMG from Milwaukee that ended up winning Jam of the Year. And so I thought because it had all of these elements of other Jam of the Years that kind of finished in at least the top 10 or so, I thought that this would be, prevailing, but it didn't work for everyone, and that's okay.
Well, yeah. It was hard to top the hype of the February run too.
Yeah, fair.
Those early shows always get a lot more bias, in my opinion. But we'll talk with our AAT friends about that.
Fair enough.
Let's get into honorable mentions. Some of the best versions of Madhuvan from the year that we didn't talk about in depth. Another show you were at, June 19th, 2025, at Jacobs Pavilion at Nautica in Cleveland. And then a show I was at, October 4th, 2025, at the Mann Center in Philly. Short but awesome dark version. And then last but not least,
that one hadn't got ripcorded. I'm sorry, dude. Yeah. I got to say, that one that you were at, if they hadn't ripcorded it, oh my God. I was just listening to that Madhuvan 2 days ago, and that one is the Madhuvan that wasn't, because it was in a great place, and it was really about to take off before he ripcords it.
If that thing got 5 more minutes, it would be up there.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. It's very unique for its short length.
That riff that Rick latched onto, especially, was so unique that early on, and just immediately hit the ground running. And it's they crammed a lot of jam into that short runtime. But anyway, the last one is one we were both at. So December 12th, 2025, at Amica Mutual Pavilion in Providence for Goosemas. Brought back the bliss on that one. So really, really fun listens all around. 2025 did have a lot of quality, to your point.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of like what we talked about with Jam of the Year 2024 versus 2025. I feel like 2025 had better top end contenders than 2022, but 2022, if you're going for depth of great Madhuvans, is probably the year to go to.
Oh yeah, they were just playing a version worth discussing on this episode every week. It felt like it was insane.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh gosh, so that's our brief but deep dive into Madhuvan up to this point in Goose lore. Really wish we could go back and find some of the tapes on some of these 2014, 2015 versions that are impossible to find now, but I'm sure someone has something somewhere. But really cool to take a dive back as far as we could. And even in the short time, we talk about 2022 to now, hearing the evolution of sound and preferences from Goose and how much they've really dialed in their sound overall. It's a cool ride. So hopefully you pick up on some of that on this playlist we put together on Nugs. We'll have that in our show description. And good luck listening to all this in one sitting, but it's about 13 hours of music, and we could have added more, but we tried to cut it down.
If you're going on a road trip, though, I've test drove it. It's really good for that. And one other thing I didn't get to say during the episode, but if anyone gets a chance and hasn't seen it already, I definitely recommend go check out the article by Dennis Sunder from 2020. It's got a lot of great thoughts on the lyrics of Madhuvan, and it's got an interview with Rick about some of his thoughts on Eastern religion and his spiritual journey. It adds a lot of context to the song. So if any of you want to take a dive into that, I highly recommend it. I've read it several times myself.
Yeah, it's a great article. We'll link to that in the show doc as well. There's a lot to read about Madhuvan. Actually, there's been a lot of great discussions by Rick and the band in general. There's some stuff in the Elgoose Times, even. Shout out to them. We love the Elgoose Times. But
Yeah.
yeah, that is a bow on our Madhuvan episode for now. I'm sure we're gonna have to deep dive Madhuvan again in 5 years and have another 12-hour playlist from versions from 2026
Sure.
on.
Accurate.
Oh man. But thank you all for listening to this long episode of the Slow Ready Podcast. Again, give us a follow if you don't follow us already at Slow Ready Pod everywhere, or email us slowreadypod@gmail.com. Even if you want to tell us like what you had for breakfast today. Like we love hearing from you. So um really can't thank you enough for listening to this point. Hope you really enjoy listening to some Madhuvan after this. And if you're going on tour, hope you're safe and we hope to see you on the road. Oh, that reminds me, Mike will be at the first run of shows, and then we'll both be at the Florida shows from Clearwater and St. Augustine on. So come find us. We'll have stickers.
Yeah, we've got, I think, like 95% of the spring run covered with one or both of us in attendance. So we love meeting all of y'all. So like, please don't be shy. If you see us at a concert, come say up. I promise we're like very, very friendly people, and we have way more stickers than we know what to do with. So like, please come up and introduce yourself. We'd love to chat with you about our favorite band.
Hey, speak for yourself, man. I'm not. No, we hand out a lot of stickers, but it's never enough. Although the ones that flew off or flew out of my bag were the Prison Rick ones from The Office. So those go quick. I ordered some more, but those will be gone first, I have to imagine. But we had some new fun ones we made. Like there's like Anchorman, but it's Sinnerman. There's a 726 one that looks like the 7 Up logo. What else do we make? There's Napoleon Dynamite with Peter instead of Pedro. It's vote for Peter. So there's a lot of cool stickers we made, and we're gonna have fun going to the shows and meeting y'all. And yeah, like Mike said, don't be shy. But if you're traveling, safe travels, and we hope to catch you on the road.
See y'all.